Have you ever stepped into a grand cathedral or an ancient temple and felt an instant shift in your mood? That overwhelming sense of awe, that quiet reverence. It wasn't just the stained glass or the echoing hymns. It was the architecture itself, whispering to you through shapes and patterns perfected over centuries. This is the power of sacred geometry, a hidden language of design that rulers, priests, and architects have used to shape human behavior for thousands of years. Think about it. Why do certain spaces make us feel small yet safe, while others leave us uneasy or even fearful? The answer lies in the deliberate use of geometric principles, crafted to guide our emotions and actions without us even realizing it. From the towering pyramids of Egypt to the labyrinthine layouts of medieval cathedrals, sacred geometry was more than just art. It was a tool of control. These structures weren't built simply to impress. They were designed to command obedience, to inspire devotion, and even to instill fear. The precise alignment of arches, the repetition of fractal patterns, the hypnotic spirals leading your gaze upward, all of it was calculated to direct your thoughts and movements. And here's the chilling part, it still works today. Modern cities, government buildings, and even shopping malls use these same geometric tricks to influence how we behave, often without us ever noticing. So how did ancient builders unlock this psychological power? And why does it still hold sway over us in the 21st century? That's the journey we're about to take together. We'll unravel the secrets of sacred geometry, from its mystical origins to its chillingly practical applications. You'll see how a simple circle or a carefully placed pillar could dictate the fate of empires, and how these designs continue to shape our world in ways you've never imagined. This isn't just a story about architecture, it's about the invisible strings that have pulled at humanity for millennia. Stick with us, and by the end, you'll never look at a city skyline or a place of worship the same way again. To understand why sacred geometry holds such power over us, we need to travel back to the dawn of civilization, where mathematics and mysticism were inseparable. The Egyptians didn't just build pyramids, they encoded the very fabric of the universe into their designs. Take the Great Pyramid of Giza, for example. Its sides align with near-perfect precision to the cardinal directions, and its proportions mirror the golden ratio, a mathematical relationship found in everything from seashells to spiral galaxies. To the ancients, this wasn't just clever engineering. It was a way to bridge the earthly and the divine. Step inside one of these structures, and you'd feel the weight of something greater pressing down on you, guiding your movements, your thoughts, even your prayers. The Greeks took this idea even further. Philosophers like Pythagoras believed numbers and shapes were the language of the gods. To them, a circle wasn't just a shape, it symbolized perfection, eternity, the unbroken cycle of life. When they designed temples like the Parthenon, every column, every curve was calculated using sacred ratios. Walk through one of these spaces, and your eyes would naturally follow the lines upward toward the heavens, while the symmetry of the layout made you move in slow, deliberate steps. It was architecture as psychological programming, teaching people how to behave without a single spoken rule. But here's what's truly fascinating, these patterns still resonate with us today, thousands of years later. Studies show that humans instinctively prefer spaces built with these ancient proportions. Rooms with golden ratio dimensions feel right, while chaotic, uneven designs trigger unease. That's why modern architects still use these principles, whether they're designing a courthouse to command authority or a shopping mall to keep you wandering longer. The shapes haven't changed, and neither has their effect on us. we're still responding to the same invisible cues that once guided worshippers in ancient temples, proving that sacred geometry isn't just history, it's a living, breathing force shaping our world right now. Walk into the Parthenon and your eyes are immediately drawn upward, not by accident but by design. Those towering columns aren't just holding up the roof, they're pulling your gaze toward the heavens, forcing your body into a posture of reverence. Every measurement in that space was calculated using the golden ratio, a mathematical formula that the Greeks believed echoed the harmony of the cosmos. The result, a building that doesn't just house gods but shapes the minds of those who enter. The repetition of columns, the rhythmic spacing of windows, it all creates a hypnotic effect, slowing your steps, quieting your thoughts, and priming you to accept whatever message the priests or rulers wanted to impart. Now fast forward to the Middle Ages, and you'll find the same principles carved into the stones of Chartres Cathedral. Here, the architects took sacred geometry to new heights, literally. The vaulted ceilings stretch so high they seem to dissolve into light, making you feel infinitesimally small. The rose windows aren't just beautiful, their intricate fractal patterns are designed to overload your senses, inducing a trance-like state perfect for prayer or obedience. Even the labyrinth etched into the floor served a purpose. Walking its winding path was a form of meditation, a way to break down resistance before reaching the altar. But here's what's truly unsettling. These techniques weren't reserved for holy spaces. Take a closer look at the palaces of Renaissance Europe or the grand plazas of imperial cities, and you'll spot the same tricks. Symmetrical facades commanded respect, while carefully placed statues and fountains directed foot traffic like invisible hands. The message was clear, order was divine, and deviation was unthinkable. Even the acoustics played a role: whisper in the right spot of a cathedral, and your voice would carry as if the building itself were amplifying your words, a subtle reminder that someone, somewhere, was always listening. What's remarkable is how little has changed. Modern governments and corporations still use these same geometric strategies to influence behavior. Ever notice how banks and courthouses often borrow the columns and domes of ancient temples? Or how shopping malls use labyrinthine layouts to keep you browsing longer? The tools have evolved, but the blueprint remains the same. Sacred geometry wasn't just about worship. It was the original psychological warfare, a way to sculpt human behavior brick by brick. And whether we realize it or not, we're still stepping into its carefully laid traps every single day. Power in symmetry wasn't just about beauty, it was about authority. Look at the Palace of Versailles, its sprawling gardens laid out with military precision, every hedge and fountain mirroring its counterpart in flawless balance. This wasn't landscaping, it was psychological warfare. By imposing perfect symmetry on nature itself, rulers sent a clear message: disorder would not be tolerated. Walk those manicured paths, and your very footsteps reinforced the idea that harmony came only through submission. The Forbidden City in Beijing took this further. Its vast courtyards and gates arranged along a strict north-south axis, aligning earthly power with celestial order. To step inside was to accept your place in an unchanging hierarchy, where even the architecture whispered that rebellion was futile. But why does symmetry hold such sway over us? Science offers clues. Studies show our brains are wired to prefer balanced designs. They signal safety, predictability, even truth. Ancient leaders exploited this instinct ruthlessly. In Rome, emperors built basilicas with identical wings flanking a central nave, subtly teaching citizens that justice flowed from the throne at the heart of it all. Medieval kings staged coronations in symmetrical cathedrals, where the repetition of arches and altars made their divine rite seem inevitable. Even the tiniest details carried weight. the paired statues guarding a palace gate, the twin staircases framing a throne room, all reinforcing the illusion that power was as natural and unshakable as geometry itself. Yet Symmetry's grip wasn't just visual. Consider how these spaces sounded. In the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, a single footstep would echo identically from both sides, surrounding visitors with the ruler's presence even when he wasn't there. Or how the Forbidden City's gates created acoustic tunnels, where a shout from the emperor would bounce between walls with eerie precision, magnifying his voice into something superhuman. These weren't accidents, they were calculated tools to overwhelm the senses and humble the mind. What's chilling is how these tactics persist. Modern Capitol buildings still use symmetry to command respect. Think of the U.S. Supreme Courts matching marble statues or the identical chambers of parliamentary halls worldwide. Even corporate headquarters and shopping centers employ mirrored facades and balanced atriums, subconsciously telling us to fall in line. The language of power hasn't changed. We've just stopped noticing how deeply it shapes us. Those perfect shapes still work their quiet magic, proving that when it comes to control, geometry might be the most persuasive ruler of all. The moment you set foot on a medieval labyrinth, your mind began to surrender without realizing it. These intricate spirals etched into cathedral floors, like the famous one at Chartres, weren't just decorative puzzles. They were carefully engineered psychological tools designed to break down resistance through sheer repetition. Picture a pilgrim weary from travel, stepping onto that winding path. With each turn, the outside world faded a little more. The body moved in predictable circles, the eyes fixed on the same stone patterns over and over until critical thought gave way to a trance-like state. By the time they reached the center, their mind was soft clay, ready to be reshaped by whatever doctrine awaited them. This wasn't just spiritual theater, it was behavioral science centuries ahead of its time. Modern research reveals why the spiral works so well. Repetitive motion reduces mental clutter, quieting the brain's critical faculties. It's the same principle behind meditation walks or even the hypnotic effect of a spinning wheel. The architects of these labyrinths didn't need fMRI scans to understand what they discovered. They knew that a body forced into ritualized movement would eventually bring the mind into compliance. And the spiral's influence didn't stop at church doors. Today, you'll find its descendants in places designed to control crowds or prolong engagement. Museums use serpentine gallery layouts to ensure you see every exhibit, while prisons adopt circular designs to minimize blind spots and maximize surveillance. Even IKEA's winding showroom path, famously hard to shortcut, owes its effectiveness to the same ancient trick. The spiral doesn't command, it gently herds, using your own momentum against you. What's most striking is how willingly we participate. No chains or walls are needed, just a carefully laid path and our ingrained response to follow it. Whether in a 13th century cathedral or a 21st century superstore, the spiral remains one of history's most elegant traps. It proves an unsettling truth. Sometimes the most powerful cages are the ones we walk into voluntarily, step by step, until we forget there was ever another way to move. A circle is the ultimate political illusion, offering the appearance of equality while secretly concentrating power. Picture a medieval king seated at the exact center of a round chamber, surrounded by his nobles. The shape suggests fairness. Everyone is equidistant from the ruler, no corners to hide in. But in reality, all eyes and energy funnel toward that central figure. Stonehenge's ancient stones form a perfect ring, drawing attention inward to rituals only the elite could perform. The U.S. Capitol Rotunda does the same today, its domed ceiling forcing visitors to gaze upward at frescoes of national mythology, while lawmakers debate at its literal heart. The circle doesn't eliminate hierarchy, it disguises it. This geometric sleight of hand works because circles hijack our instincts. Psychologists find humans naturally gather in rings around firelight or storytellers, a primal pull toward shared focus. Ancient architects weaponized this impulse. The Roman pantheon's oculus doesn't just let in light, it creates a celestial spotlight shifting with the sun, subtly reminding worshippers that divine authority watched from above. Even modern corporate boardrooms exploit this dynamic. Circular tables imply collaboration, yet the CEO's seat often aligns with the room's architectural focal point, ensuring subconscious deference. What's ingenious is how circles manufacture consent. Unlike rectangular throne rooms that physically separate rulers from subjects, circular spaces foster the illusion of participation. Tudor monarchs held court in round chambers where petitioners felt heard, yet the geometry ensured their pleas merely orbited the crown's unchanging power. Today's political rallies often use circular staging, where crowds feel united while actually radiating outward from a single speaker. The circle's genius lies in making centralization feel like community, convincing us that converging on one point is the same as standing together. Yet the most potent circles are the ones we don't even notice. Consider traffic roundabouts efficient not just for flow, but for control. Drivers yield automatically, guided by the curve's momentum. Or airport security labyrinths, where circular queues keep passengers calmly shuffling toward scrutiny. These designs borrow from sacred geometry's oldest playbook. When you remove corners, you remove alternatives. A circle presents itself as the natural order, making obedience feel as effortless as following its unbroken line. From megalithic stones to modern statecraft, the message remains unchanged. True power doesn't force compliance. It designs the stage so we choose it ourselves. Roman military engineers knew something modern city planners still rely on. There's no better tool for control than a straight line. When legionnaires laid out their camps, they didn't just create orderly rows of tents, they built a psychological cage. Those perfect grids of intersecting streets weren't about convenience, they were about domination. A soldier could stand at any crossroads and see clear to the camp's edges, spotting trouble long before it reached him. Civilians moving through these spaces learned to walk briskly, head down, because right angles left no shadows to hide in. 2,000 years later, New York's rigid street grid achieves the same effect without a single centurion in sight. The genius of the grid lies in its illusion of fairness. Unlike winding medieval lanes that twist unpredictably, gridded streets promise equality, every block identical, every intersection uniform. But this uniformity is a trick. Straight streets accelerate movement, discouraging lingering. Think about it, when was the last time you spontaneously stopped to chat in the middle of Fifth Avenue? The grid's relentless geometry pushes people like a conveyor belt, funneling them efficiently from shops to offices without wasted time or unwanted gatherings. Even protest marches in grid cities follow predetermined routes, their paths as predictable as the streets beneath their feet. Modern surveillance takes this ancient principle to terrifying heights. Chicago's alleyways, originally designed for garbage collection, now form perfect sightlines for police cameras. Barcelona's Eixample district, with its octagonal blocks, lets authorities monitor multiple streets from a single vantage point. These designs didn't emerge by accident. 19th century reformers openly admitted grids would prevent the congregation of dangerous elements. Today's smart cities just digitize the same old control, with sensors tracking movement through geometric choke points that would feel familiar to a Roman centurion. Yet the most insidious grids aren't made of stone or asphalt, they're the ones we carry inside us. Office cubicles arrange workers in orderly rows like crops in a field. Supermarkets stack products in rigid aisles, training shoppers to move in predictable patterns. Even social media feeds us content in grids, conditioning endless scrolling. The message is clear: deviation is inefficiency, and inefficiency won't be tolerated. From castrum to cubicle, the straight line remains civilization's favorite weapon, not because it's natural, but because it makes us behave as if it is. Gothic architects didn't just build churches, they built psychological traps disguised as divine inspiration. Those soaring pointed arches weren't merely structural innovations. They were carefully crafted tools of manipulation, designed to hijack your gaze and, by extension, your thoughts. Every rib of stone pulling your eyes upward wasn't about supporting the roof. It was about supporting a hierarchy. The higher your eyes traveled, the smaller you felt, and the more willing you became to accept whatever doctrine dripped down from the pulpit. This wasn't accidental artistry. The shift from rounded Romanesque arches to the sharp Gothic style marked a revolution in behavioral control. A rounded arch creates a sense of enclosure, like arms cradling the faithful. But a pointed arch, it's a spear aimed at the heavens, forcing your attention skyward until your neck aches with reverence. Walk into Notre Dame or Cologne Cathedral, and you'll experience it instantly. Your body instinctively straightens, your voice drops to a whisper, all without a single command being spoken. The architecture does the commanding for you. Modern power structures adopted this trick wholesale. Step inside any grand courthouse or legislative building, and you'll find the same upward thrust. Marble columns stretch toward coffered ceilings, their vertical lines mimicking the cathedral's ribs. Even the lighting plays along. Stained glass replaced by skylights that make judges or politicians appear bathed in celestial glow. The effect is identical. You feel scrutinized by an invisible authority, conditioned to comply before the first word is spoken. But here's the twist: this vertical hypnosis works even when we're unaware of it. Studies show that people in tall, narrow spaces rate their own ideas as less significant, while feeling external rules carry more weight. That's why luxury stores use vaulted ceilings to make price tags feel justified, and why corporate lobbies tower over visitors before they reach the reception desk. The pointed arch's descendants surround us, their silent power undiminished by time. Whether in sacred space or secular, the lesson remains. If you want obedience, don't just tell people to look up, build a world where they can't look away. The golden ratio isn't just a number, it's a silent puppeteer pulling our emotions with invisible strings. That spiral of a nautilus shell, the curve of a breaking wave, even the spacing of leaves on a stem, all follow this ancient mathematical rule. And here's the unsettling truth: our brains are hardwired to respond to it. Studies show that when we encounter the golden ratio, our pupils dilate slightly, our heart rate steadies, and our subconscious whispers, "This is right." Renaissance masters like Leonardo da Vinci didn't just know this, they weaponized it. Look at the Vitruvian Man, his limbs perfectly aligned with the ratio's proportions, or the Parthenon's facade, its columns spaced to trigger that same instinctive calm. These weren't artistic choices, they were psychological traps. Fast forward to today, and the golden ratio still works its magic in ways you'd never suspect. Ever wonder why certain logos feel instantly familiar? Apple's bitten apple, Twitter's bird, even Pepsi's swirling circle, all are built on the ratio's precise curves. Advertisers use it to craft faces in commercials, ensuring actors' features hit that magical 1.618 proportion that makes us trust them implicitly. Politicians' posters place their eyes at golden ratio points, so your gaze locks onto them like a magnet. Even your smartphone's apps are arranged using these proportions, keeping you scrolling just a little longer. But the most chilling application isn't in art or tech, it's in architecture of control. Banks incorporate the ratio in their lobby's dimensions to make clients feel secure while signing loans. Casinos design slot machine displays with golden spiral patterns to keep gamblers hypnotized. The ratio's power lies in its subtlety. Unlike overt propaganda, it doesn't shout. It hums, lulling us into compliance with shapes that feel as natural as breathing. What's fascinating is how effortlessly we surrender to it. No conspiracy required, just centuries of evolution that tuned our brains to equate this proportion with harmony. From pharaohs measuring pyramids to algorithms shaping your social media feed, the golden ratio remains history's most elegant con. It doesn't force obedience, it simply arranges the world so that obedience feels like beauty. And that's the real genius. When control is woven into the very fabric of what we find lovely, we don't resist, we lean in. Glance at a rose window in a medieval cathedral, and you might see divine beauty, but look closer. Those interlocking petals form perfect pentagrams, their five-pointed symmetry hidden in plain sight. This wasn't accidental artistry. To the architects who designed them, these shapes were cosmic locks, holding back chaos by aligning sacred geometry with celestial forces. The same symbols appear in Moorish tilework, where repeating hexagrams create star patterns that seem to vibrate with hidden energy. These designs weren't just pleasing to the eye, they were spiritual armor, believed to protect sacred spaces from unseen threats. What's startling is how openly these occult shapes were displayed, yet how few noticed their true purpose. Take the labyrinth in Chartres Cathedral. Its 11 concentric circles mirror the orbits of medieval cosmology, a coded map of the universe meant to guide initiates toward enlightenment. Or consider the Vatican's courtyard of the Pigna, where a colossal bronze pine cone, an ancient symbol of spiritual awakening, sits atop a stepped pyramid, flanked by peacocks representing immortality. These weren't whimsical decorations, they were visual spells, embedding esoteric knowledge where only the trained eye could decipher it. Fast forward to the 18th century, and you'll find these same geometric codes smuggled into fraternal lodges and secret societies. Masonic tracing boards conceal pentagrams within compass and square designs, while initiation chambers use black and white checkerboard floors to represent duality, the eternal struggle between light and dark. Even today, corporate logos and government seals borrow these ancient symbols, though their original meanings have faded into obscurity. The all-seeing eye atop the pyramid on the U.S. dollar bill, that's no accident. It's a direct descendant of Egyptian hieroglyphs representing divine oversight. Why do these patterns persist? Because geometry speaks a language deeper than words. A hexagram doesn't just symbolize balance, it creates it through its perfect symmetry, triggering our subconscious recognition of order. Modern architects still hide these shapes in plain sight, from the pentagonal layout of the pentagon to the occult geometries woven into contemporary concert halls and financial districts. The symbols haven't lost their power, we've just forgotten how to listen. They remain as they always were, silent guardians of secrets, etched into the bones of our world, waiting for those who know how to see. Whisper in the dome of the Pantheon, and your voice will travel as if the gods themselves are speaking through you. This isn't just an acoustic quirk, it's a feat of geometric engineering perfected by the Romans to command awe. The curvature of that massive ceiling doesn't just reflect sound, it bends perception, making even a murmur feel like divine revelation. Ancient rulers understood something modern architects still exploit. Control isn't just about what you see, it's about what you hear. Step into the whispering gallery of St. Paul's Cathedral, where a word spoken against one wall slithers along the curved stone to reach someone 30 meters away. These spaces weren't designed for parlor games, they were acoustic traps, ensuring no dissent went unnoticed. Medieval monks arranged their choir stalls in precise semicircles, not just for harmony, but so every note of Gregorian chant would resonate through the nave, vibrating ribcage and stirring devotion. The message was clear: in a space where sound itself obeyed geometry, so too should the people. Today's lecture halls and courtrooms use the same tricks, just with subtler intentions. The parabolic curves behind modern podiums aren't there for aesthetics, they're sonic funnels, directing a speaker's voice with laser precision to every seat. Notice how judges or professors never seem to raise their voices. That's no accident. The architecture does the projecting for them, wrapping their words in an unspoken authority that makes disagreement feel like shouting into a storm. Even corporate amphitheaters, with their cascading tiers, ensure the CEO's speech rolls downward like an avalanche, leaving employees straining to hear rather than think. But the most insidious acoustic control hides in plain silence. Consider the brutalist concrete walls of 20th century government buildings. Their jagged surfaces don't just look imposing. They deaden sound, forcing visitors to lean in nervously, their voices thin and exposed. Or the padded hush of luxury hotels, where the absence of echo makes whispered deals feel intimate and conspiratorial. These spaces don't just carry sound, they sculpt it, turning volume into a weapon of compliance. From oracle chambers where priests stage divine voices to modern surveillance rooms where every footstep is amplified, the lesson remains: if you want to rule minds, first master their ears. The right curve in the right place can make obedience sound like your own idea. Stand before a medieval castle, and every line of its design told you the same story: resistance is futile. Those towering walls weren't just thick, they were calculated to crush hope before the first arrow flew. Take the concentric rings of Caerphilly Castle in Wales, each perfect circle of defense forcing attackers through ever-narrowing kill zones. The geometry was brutal in its efficiency. Every curve funneled enemies into overlapping fields of fire, while the concentric layout meant even breaching one wall left you exposed in a deadly no-man's land. But the real genius wasn't in stopping invaders. It was in making them feel outmatched before they even raised a ladder. Arrow slits reveal another layer of psychological manipulation. Those narrow vertical openings weren't just practical, they were theatrical. From the outside, they appeared as mere cracks, disguising the archer's position while amplifying the terror of unseen arrows. But step inside, and the slit flares into a wide killing field, giving defenders lethal precision. The message was clear: the castle saw you, even when you couldn't see it. Even moats followed geometric logic. Their reflective surfaces doubled the apparent height of walls, while their precise curvature prevented siege towers from gaining stable footing. Every element conspired to make assault feel like suicide. Fast forward to the modern era, and the language of intimidation hasn't changed, just the materials. Government buildings today abandon curves for sharp, angular facades that seem to repel approach. The Pentagon's five-sided design isn't just iconic, it's a subliminal deterrent, its vast, flat walls offering no handholds for protest or attention. Brutalist architecture takes this further, with concrete geometries so harsh they trigger instinctive unease. Studies show people walk faster past these buildings, as if their very shapes emit a low-frequency warning. Yet the most potent geometric weapon might be the simplest, the staircase. Medieval keeps placed spiral staircases clockwise, forcing right-handed attackers to swing swords against the central pillar while defenders had free range. Modern courthouses use the same trick. Their grand, sweeping stairs force visitors to ascend slowly under the gaze of authorities, their bodies literally rising toward judgment. Whether carved from stone or poured from concrete, the lesson remains: geometry doesn't just defend power, it performs it, turning cold calculations into visceral fear. And once you recognize the pattern, you'll see these silent sentinels everywhere, their angles whispering the oldest lie of all, that resistance was never an option. The moment you step into Istanbul's Grand Bazaar, the labyrinth takes hold. Narrow alleyways curve unexpectedly, stalls of spices and silks blur into a kaleidoscope of color, and before you know it, you've lost all sense of direction. This isn't poor planning, it's precision engineering. For centuries, merchants have known that a confused shopper is a profitable one. The bazaar's winding paths, with their deliberate dead ends and circular routes, aren't just charming chaos. They're a calculated strategy to keep you wandering, browsing, and most importantly, spending. Modern shopping malls have perfected this ancient trick. Take IKEA's infamous showroom layout, a single, serpentine path that guides you past every display, from living rooms to lighting, with no shortcuts allowed. Research reveals shoppers exposed to disorienting layouts spend nearly 20% more than those in grid-based stores. The psychology is simple. When you can't easily retrace your steps, you're more likely to impulse buy just to feel a sense of progress. It's no coincidence that food courts and restrooms are often hidden deep in these mazes, forcing you to pass endless temptations before earning your respite. But the real mastery lies in how these designs borrow from sacred geometry's oldest playbook. The same spirals that once led pilgrims to enlightenment now steer credit cards toward checkout counters. Medieval cathedrals used labyrinthine floors to induce meditative states. Today's retailers use nearly identical patterns to induce what marketers call the Gruen effect. That dazed, hypnotic feeling that makes you forget why you walked in and suddenly need things you never planned to buy. Even the lighting follows ancient principles. Grand bazaars filtered sunlight through colored fabrics to create an otherworldly glow, just as modern malls use artificial skylights to erase time, making you lose track of hours. The circular fountains at shopping centers, they're direct descendants of monastic cloisters, where the sound of flowing water was used to calm minds into compliance. Every element conspires to keep you in that sweet spot between frustration and comfort, just lost enough to keep walking, just found enough to keep spending. What's chilling is how willingly we play along. No one forces us to follow the painted arrows on the floor or the subtly sloped pathways that pull us deeper into the maze. Like worshippers in a sacred labyrinth, we submit to the path, mistaking its twists for choice. The great irony, the geometry that once elevated souls now empties wallets, proving that the most effective cages are the ones we mistake for freedom. Look up in any major city, and you'll find them towering stone needles piercing the sky, bronze giants frozen in heroic poses. These aren't just decorations, they're psychological anchors designed to rewrite how we see power. Take the Washington Monument, its stark white obelisk rising 169 meters into the air. The shape is no accident. Obelisks originated in ancient Egypt, where they symbolized the sun god's rays petrified into stone, a direct line between pharaohs and the divine. When 19th century planners placed one at the heart of America's capital, they weren't just honoring a president, they were installing a subconscious cue. Authority flows downward from that unchanging point in the sky to the citizens below. But why does this trick work? Science reveals our brains equate verticality with dominance. Studies show people rate abstract shapes as more powerful when they're taller, a vestige of evolutionary instincts that associated height with survival advantage. Dictators and democracies alike exploit this. Stalin's Seven Sisters, the Gothic skyscrapers dotting Moscow, were designed to dwarf pedestrians, their spires echoing cathedral silhouettes to fuse Soviet ideology with spiritual awe. Even the Statue of Liberty employs this effect. Her raised torch isn't just a symbol, it's a focal point pulling millions of eyes upward. making the abstract idea of freedom feel tangible and unassailable. The true genius lies in how these monuments manipulate space. Notice how national malls and plaza designs force you to approach statues from below, your neck craning as you near. This isn't practical necessity, it's theatrical staging. By the time you stand at the base of the Lincoln Memorial, the seated president looms 11 meters tall, his gaze fixed beyond you, making even the act of looking up feel like supplication. Modern corporations use the same tactic. Apple's glass cube stores position their logos high above entrances, so every customer passes beneath the brand's watchful eye. Yet the most potent monuments aren't the ones we notice, they're the ones we ignore. Consider the humble flagpole. Its sheer verticality makes the fluttering flag seem larger, more commanding, a trick Roman armies used with their standards. Or the way war memorials arranged names in ascending columns, forcing mourners to lift their eyes as if in prayer. These designs don't just commemorate, they condition, training generations to equate elevation with reverence. What's chilling is how effortlessly we comply. No one forces us to stop and stare at a towering obelisk. We do it instinctively, our biology conspiring with the architect's intent. From the Luxor obelisk in Paris to the towering statues of Mount Rushmore, the message is clear. If you want to carve obedience into a culture's bones, don't write it in books. Cast it in bronze, carve it in stone, and let gravity do the rest. Those zigzagging herringbone bricks beneath your feet aren't just decorative, they're a silent traffic cop steering your movements without you even realizing it. Take a closer look at any historic city center, and you'll spot the trick. Diagonal brickwork subtly nudges pedestrians toward market squares, while parallel lines funnel them away from restricted areas. In Bruges, medieval builders laid cobblestones in radiating sunburst patterns around churches, creating paths that felt divinely ordained. Pilgrims would instinctively follow these stone rays to the altar, as if pulled by invisible strings. Modern architects have refined this ancient tool into a science. Airports now use directional paving to manipulate passenger flow. Wide, straight lines speed travelers toward security, while chaotic, interlocking patterns slow them near duty-free shops. Ever notice how you drift toward certain exits without thinking? That's no accident. Studies show people subconsciously align their gait with dominant ground patterns, a phenomenon called pavement bias. Disney World exploits this masterfully. Main Street's angled bricks draw visitors toward Cinderella Castle, while subtle color gradients mark emergency routes cast members use during evacuations. But the real power lies in what these patterns suppress. Crosshatched textures at train platforms create psychological barriers, discouraging loitering near tracks. Grooved pavement outside government buildings makes skateboarders veer away instinctively. Even the humble crosswalk is a geometric leash. Its stripes don't just mark safety zones, they regiment movement into orderly lines, transforming a bustling crowd into neat rows of compliant pedestrians. What's unsettling is how effortlessly we obey. No signs, no barriers, just cleverly arranged stone or concrete whispering to our nervous systems. From the fractal-like stepping stones of Japanese Zen gardens designed to force mindful, slowed steps, to the dizzying spirals etched into shopping mall floors to keep shoppers circling, the ground beneath us has always been the first and subtlest architect of obedience. The greatest trick these patterns ever pulled was convincing us we were walking freely. Glass towers don't scrape the sky by accident. They're modern ziggurats, their gleaming facades rewriting an age-old script of power. Walk into any corporate headquarters, and you'll find the same sacred geometry that once governed Babylonian temples, only now dressed in steel and glass. Those sprawling open floor plans, They're not about collaboration, they're panopticons in disguise. Just like ancient priests climbed stepped pyramids to commune with the gods, today's executives ascend elevators to penthouse suites, their every move mirrored by the building's invisible hierarchy. The higher you go, the thinner the air, and the thicker the illusion that those at the top deserve to be there. Take a closer look at the layout. Ancient ziggurats narrowed as they rose, each tier smaller than the last, reserving the summit for elites. Modern skyscrapers follow the same blueprint: junior employees clustered in cubicles below, middle managers in glass-walled offices midway, and the C-suite floating in isolated splendor above. The message is baked into the architecture. Mobility is vertical and visibility is control. Floor-to-ceiling windows aren't just for views, they're one-way mirrors of accountability, ensuring workers feel watched even when no one's looking. It's no coincidence that tech campuses pair these transparent walls with hot desking, a system where no one claims permanent space, keeping everyone perpetually off balance. But the real mastery lies in how these designs weaponize light. Just as Gothic cathedrals used stained glass to flood altars with celestial glow, corporate lobbies drench executives in natural light while shrouding lower floors in artificial luminescence. The effect is primal. Sunlight becomes a status symbol, its scarcity a silent reminder of your place in the pecking order. Even the materials whisper subtext: cold marble for reception areas where visitors wait, warm wood for boardrooms where decisions are made. Every texture, every sigh of the HVAC system is calibrated to signal who belongs where. What's chilling is how seamlessly we've accepted this geometric caste system. We laugh about corporate ladders without noticing they're literal. Their rungs etched into elevator buttons, their pinnacle reserved for those who have learned to perform under unblinking architectural scrutiny. From the ziggurats of Ur to the skyline of Manhattan, the playbook hasn't changed. Only the materials have. The gods of commerce now demand glass sacrifices, and we line up to worship at their altar, mistaking transparency for freedom when it's just another kind of cage. The Pentagon's five-sided silhouette isn't just a feat of engineering, it's a geometric ghost whispering secrets from an age when shapes held divine power. Step back and you'll see it, the same five-pointed star hidden in medieval rose windows, the same pentagram that alchemists believed could bind angels or demons. Modern architects might claim the design maximizes office space efficiency, but history tells a different story. Five-sided structures have always been sacred, from the Pythagoreans' worship of the pentagon as a symbol of life to Renaissance magicians embedding it in protective amulets. That the world's most powerful military chose this shape isn't coincidence. It's the subconscious resurrection of geometry's oldest spell. Now look at your morning commute through that same lens. Those circular traffic roundabouts, they're Stonehenge in asphalt, funneling cars the way ancient druids once directed processions. The design works because circles speak to something primal in us, the same instinct that made Neolithic tribes gather in rings around fires or medieval peasants orbit maypoles. Modern planners didn't invent these patterns, they simply repurposed sacred blueprints for secular control. Even the chaos of a busy intersection bows to geometry's invisible hand, proving that order doesn't need gods to govern, just the right angles. What's fascinating is how these shapes shed their mystical skins while keeping their power. The pyramid on the U.S. dollar bill no longer symbolizes ascent to Ra's solar bark, it's now about economic stability. The spiral staircases in corporate lobbies aren't pilgrim paths to enlightenment. They're status indicators, their turns subtly slowing visitors as they ascend toward power. The magic didn't disappear, it went incognito, hiding in plain sight behind the alibi of functionality. Yet sometimes the veil slips. Next time you pass a courthouse, notice how its columns mimic temple ruins, or how the vaulted ceilings in grand train stations echo monastic cloisters. These aren't aesthetic choices, they're architectural hauntings, spaces where geometry's old ghosts still murmur their quiet commands. The gods may have left the building, but their blueprints remain, etched into the steel and concrete of our supposedly secular world. And whether we kneel in prayer or hurry to catch a train, we're still following their invisible lines. Unlock your phone, and the first thing you'll see isn't just a screen. It's a meticulously crafted geometric trap. Those perfectly spaced app icons aren't arranged for convenience. They're plotted using the same golden ratio that guided ancient temple builders. Swipe left, and you're pulled into an endless spiral of content, a digital labyrinth designed to keep your thumb scrolling long after your brain begs for respite. Tech giants didn't invent these tricks, they stole them from cathedral architects and medieval mystics, repurposing sacred geometry for a new age of obedience. Every time you tap a notification, you're stepping into a psychological arena engineered to exploit your deepest instincts. Social media feeds mirror the fractal patterns of Rose windows, their repeating cycles of images and headlines triggering the same trance-like focus as a pilgrim walking a meditation labyrinth. Even the pull to refresh mechanic isn't original. It's a digital reinvention of the prayer wheel, offering the illusion of control while conditioning you to crave the next dopamine spin. The glow of your screen replaces stained glass, but the goal remains unchanged. Keep you in the sacred loop where every swipe feels like devotion. What's chilling is how seamlessly these designs hijack our biology. The golden ratios, proportions the same ones that make Renaissance paintings feel harmonious, are now embedded in every like button and progress bar. Studies show our pupils dilate slightly when encountering this ratio, a subconscious signal of pleasure tech companies exploit ruthlessly. Circular profile pictures tap into our instinct to trust faces, while infinite scrolls mimic the hypnotic effect of spirals used in ancient initiation rites. Even the color gradients behind apps are calculated using Fibonacci sequences, making your brain interpret them as natural and trustworthy. But the real mastery lies in the negative spaces, the pauses between clicks, the microseconds of loading animations. Like the deliberate silence in a cathedral that makes whispers carry farther, these gaps heighten anticipation, making every notification feel urgent. Modern UI designers don't just borrow from sacred geometry. They've weaponized it, turning your phone into a pocket-sized panopticon where you're both the worshipper and the watched. The priests wear hoodies now, and the altar is made of silicon, but the ancient blueprint remains unchanged. Shape the path, and the people will follow. Jeremy Bentham's panopticon was more than a prison design. It was a geometric mind game. Picture a circular building with a central watchtower, its slitted windows allowing guards to see into every cell while remaining invisible themselves. The genius wasn't in the surveillance, it was in the uncertainty. Prisoners could never know if they were being watched at any given moment, so they began policing their own behavior, internalizing the guards' gaze until it lived inside their skulls. The panopticon didn't need walls to constrain bodies. It used angles to trap minds. Fast forward to today, and you'll find the same geometric manipulation in places you'd least expect. Open-plan offices with their rows of desks radiating from a manager's glass-walled perch are corporate panopticons. Employees can't see if their boss is watching, so they perform productivity like actors on a stage. Their screens angled just so, their posture perpetually busy. Even the humble Ring doorbell follows this blueprint. Its unblinking lens might not always record, but its mere presence makes you straighten your posture before stepping onto the porch. The bars have been replaced by sightlines, the shackles by subconscious calculations. What's chilling is how these designs exploit our deepest instincts. Humans are hardwired to respond to being watched. Studies show even a poster with staring eyes can reduce theft in public spaces. Architects and tech companies weaponize this reflex. Schools arrange classrooms around administrative hubs, their windows positioned like Bentham's watchtower. Smart cities install cameras in circular arrays, ensuring every angle is covered while keeping monitoring centers hidden. The message is clear: obedience thrives in the gaps between certainty and doubt. But the most insidious panopticons are the ones we carry with us. Social media's endless scroll mirrors the prison's circular layout, with algorithms playing the role of the unseen guard. We curate our lives not because someone's always watching, but because they might be. Like Bentham's prisoners, we've learned to cage ourselves, turning every coffee shop and commute into a stage where we perform for invisible judges. The panopticon's real triumph wasn't in controlling criminals, it was in teaching the rest of us to build our own. Burning Man's Black Rock City seems like the ultimate experiment in radical freedom, a sprawling desert utopia where anything goes. But look at its blueprint and you'll spot the oldest trick in the book: a perfect circle sliced into pie-like sectors with a towering wooden temple at its center. This isn't chaos, it's geometry disguised as liberation. The circular layout ensures every camper faces inward, their attention funneled toward the man like sunflowers to light. Roads radiate outward like spokes, making navigation effortless but also ensuring that no matter how far you wander, the design pulls you back to the heart of the spectacle. Even in a place that prides itself on rebellion, the ancient language of control speaks loud and clear. Olympic stadiums play the same game. Those sweeping curves and symmetrical tiers aren't just about aesthetics, they're crowd control tools perfected over millennia. Take the Colosseum's influence on modern arenas. Concentric seating arranges thousands of spectators into neat hierarchies, with sight lines calculated so every gaze converges on the central stage. The message is subliminal but inescapable. This is where you look, this is what matters. Even the exits follow geometric logic with vomitoria, those tunnel-like passageways designed to disgorge crowds efficiently, transforming a roaring mass back into orderly lines with mathematical precision. The games may celebrate human achievement, but the architecture ensures the audience never forgets their place. What's fascinating is how these designs manipulate joy itself. Music festivals like Coachella arrange stages in deliberate triangles or crescents, forcing revelers to crisscross distances that feel spontaneous but are actually choreographed. The spacing between food stalls, rest areas, and attractions follows golden ratio proportions, making the experience feel natural while covertly prolonging engagement. Even the mosh pit's chaotic swirl obeys hidden geometric rules, circles that expand and contract like breathing organisms, their boundaries enforced not by walls but by collective muscle memory. The cruelest trick: these spaces convince us we're escaping control when we're really enacting it. At Burning Man, participants build elaborate art cars only to parade them along predetermined routes. Olympic crowds chant and wave flags in patterns that mirror ancient harvest rituals. The geometry of celebration hasn't evolved, it's just traded stone for steel, altars for stages, and gods for celebrities. We still move in sacred shapes, mistaking the cage for the key. Walk into any university lecture hall, and you'll unknowingly step into a geometric experiment centuries in the making. Those tiered seats fanning outward like a sunburst aren't just about visibility, they're a psychological funnel, designed to focus every pair of eyes on the professor's podium with laser precision. The shape is deliberate. Curved rows mimic the rays of a rising sun, a subconscious cue borrowed from ancient solar temples where priests stood at the focal point of worship. Modern educators might call it acoustics or sightline optimization, but the effect is the same. Authority radiates from the center and dissent disperses to the edges. Now look beyond the lecture hall. Campus quads with their manicured lawns and stately walkways aren't just pretty spaces. They're secular cloisters, echoing the exact dimensions of medieval monastery courtyards where monks memorized scripture. The same colonnades that once framed religious processions now guide students between classes, their rhythmic arches conditioning minds to move in orderly patterns. Even the trees are planted with purpose. Ancient Oxford campuses positioned elms in perfect grids to subdivide space into rooms without walls, training scholars to think within invisible boundaries. These designs don't just house education, they silently enforce its rules. The most potent indoctrination happens in the details. Primary schools use hexagonal classroom clusters not for creativity, but for surveillance. Teachers can glance through multiple angles like prison guards in a panopticon. Desks bolted in rows train children to face forward, their bodies learning obedience long before their minds question why. Even the height of chalkboards plays a role. Positioned just above eye level, they force young necks to crane upward, reinforcing hierarchy before a single lesson begins. What's startling is how these blueprints persist in digital spaces. Virtual classrooms replicate the lecture hall sightlines with pinned speaker views and muted participant grids. Discussion forums mirror the seminary's scriptorium. Endless scrolling replaces parchment, but the ritual of absorbing approved knowledge remains unchanged. The tools have evolved, but the architecture of thought control hasn't. Whether in brick or pixels, the message is clear. Learning spaces were never neutral. They're behavior labs, and we've been the experiment all along. Ever notice how some streets seem to slow you down without a single stop sign? That's not an accident, it's geometry in action. Raised crosswalks aren't just for pedestrian safety. They're psychological speed bumps, forcing drivers to decelerate with a physical jolt. Rounded street corners don't just look charming, they widen sightlines for surveillance while breaking up the straight paths where protests might gather momentum. Every curve, every elevation change is a silent enforcer, shaping behavior long before anyone thinks to resist. Take the humble curb. It seems innocuous, but its height is calculated to the millimeter. Too low and cars might mount it in a riot. Too high and emergency vehicles struggle. The perfect curb is a barricade in plain sight, an unspoken boundary that says this far and no further. Modern cities even use neckdowns, those sidewalk extensions that narrow roads at intersections, not just to protect pedestrians, but to bottleneck crowds before they can coalesce into marches. The message is clear: dissent thrives on flow, and geometry is the ultimate flow disruptor. Protest routes reveal this hidden choreography. Ever wonder why demonstrations often end up funneled into wide, barren plazas or isolated bridges? It's not poor planning, it's design. Wide streets with few obstacles allow police lines to advance. Steep inclines drain energy from marchers. Even the texture underfoot plays a role. Cobblestones might look historic, but they're notoriously hard to run on, while smooth pavements let armored vehicles roll unimpeded. These aren't accidents, they're the architectural equivalent of a chessboard, where every move is predetermined by the grid beneath your feet. But the real mastery lies in what you don't see. Subtle slopes channel rainwater, and crowds toward drains or barriers. Benches bolted in precise patterns discourage loitering without overt bans. Streetlights spaced just so create pools of visibility and shadow, making gatherings feel exposed while moving feels safe. These details whisper to our subconscious, steering us like currents in a river. From Haussmann's wide Parisian boulevards built to prevent barricades after the French Revolution, to the zigzag barriers outside modern government buildings, the lesson is the same. Control doesn't always need gates. Sometimes all it takes is the right angle. Step into a supermarket and you're entering a carefully orchestrated geometric ritual. Those long, parallel aisles aren't just for storage, they're modern naves, guiding you toward the checkout altar with the precision of a medieval pilgrimage route. Notice how your cart seems to drift toward the right upon entering. That's no accident. Over 80% of shoppers instinctively turn right, a quirk retailers exploit by placing high-margin items along that golden path. The milk and eggs you came for, they're always in the back, forcing you to run a gauntlet of temptations first, like a worshipper passing side chapels before reaching the relic. The psychology behind shelf placement is even more revealing. Eye-level products sell up to 35% more than those above or below, a trick borrowed straight from cathedral design, where sacred statues were positioned at the exact height to meet a worshipper's gaze. End caps function like roadside shrines, their brightly colored displays triggering the same impulse stops that once made travelers pause at wayside crosses. Even the club-packed pyramids of canned goods echo ancient grain offerings, their towering abundance whispering, "Take more than you need." Your shopping cart is the ultimate geometric puppet master. Studies show carts with a slight leftward drift subconsciously slow shoppers down, increasing browsing time by nearly 20%. The basket's dimensions are calculated to make you underestimate volume. Ever wonder why you always leave with more than planned? That's the cart's curvature warping your spatial judgment, much like a Baroque church's elliptical nave distorts perception to magnify the altar. What's chilling is how these designs mirror sacred processionals. The slow march toward checkout replicates the pacing of religious rituals, with impulse-buy racks serving as modern indulgence stalls. The beep of the scanner replaces the ringing of offering bells, transforming spiritual surrender into fiscal surrender. From the temple to the big box store, the blueprint remains the same. Geometry doesn't just guide movement, it sanctifies spending. While empires built their cities in rigid grids and perfect circles, some cultures whispered a quieter rebellion through the curves of their homes. Take the medieval villages of Europe, where streets meandered like creek beds around cottages huddled shoulder to shoulder. These weren't failed attempts at order, they were deliberate rejections of geometric control. Without straight avenues for soldiers to march down or central plazas for speeches, these organic layouts made it harder for authorities to impose their will. A winding lane could hide a fugitive. A clustered square became a space for shared decision-making rather than top-down decrees. The very irregularity of these villages was their defense, proving that chaos, when communal, could be a kind of freedom. Across the Atlantic, the Navajo Hogan offered another geometric rebellion. These circular dwellings, door always facing east to greet the sun, embodied a worldview that rejected hierarchy. There were no corners to designate privileged spaces, no straight lines dividing family members by status. The Hogan's sacred geometry wasn't about control, it was about connection, its shape mirroring the cycles of nature rather than the pyramid of power. Even the construction process defied authoritarian blueprints. Hogans were built communally, their proportions guided by the human body's reach rather than abstract mathematical ideals. To sit inside one was to feel the difference, no focal point commanding attention, just an unbroken curve that made every voice equally present. The Berber villages clinging to Morocco's Atlas Mountains took this further, their terraced homes stacked like honeycombs against cliffs. Without a single dominant structure, leadership emerged through consensus rather than coercion. pathways zigzagged unpredictably, frustrating invaders while fostering chance encounters among neighbors. Compare this to the geometric precision of a Roman military camp, where every tense position reinforced rank, and you see the contrast. One design bred obedience, the other nurtured interdependence. What's remarkable is how these organic layouts persist where centralized power falters. The favelas of Rio de Janeiro, though born of necessity, echo medieval villages in their labyrinthine alleys, spaces where police patrols get lost but community thrives. The slum's very illegibility becomes its shield against outside control. Its unplanned curves a silent protest against the rigid order of zoning laws. These exceptions reveal a profound truth. Geometry isn't destiny. Every curve that defies the ruler, every wandering path that refuses the grid, whispers that there are other ways to live. The Hogan's Circle and the Faveler's Maze remind us that sacred geometry can serve solidarity as well as subjugation, if we dare to draw outside the lines. The algorithms shaping your virtual reality headset right now are writing the next chapter in sacred geometry's ancient playbook, only this time, there's no stone or marble, just lines of code invisible as whispers. Picture putting on a VR headset and stepping into a digital plaza where the buildings lean just slightly inward, their converging lines pulling your gaze toward a sponsored billboard without you realizing it. Or walking through a metaverse park where the path curves in golden ratio spirals, keeping you engaged twice as long as a straight route would. These aren't futuristic fantasies, they are already happening. Tech firms have resurrected the Gothic cathedrals tricks, swapping stained glass for pixels and vaulted ceilings for forced perspective. Smart cities are taking this further, embedding control into the very streets we walk. Sidewalks in Songdo, South Korea, use fractal pavement patterns that subconsciously slow foot traffic near retail zones, while Barcelona's superblocks algorithmically redirect cars to create pedestrian labyrinths where spending skyrockets. Even traffic lights are getting geometric upgrades. Intersections in Tokyo now adjust their signal timing based on AI-monitored crowd flow, herding pedestrians like digital sheepdogs. The pyramids had priests calculating angles to align with stars. Today's architects have machine learning models optimizing every curb radius for maximum compliance. But the real power lies in how these systems learn. Ancient sacred geometry was static once a temple was built. Its influence stayed fixed. Algorithmic geometry evolves. Your smartwatch's health app doesn't just track your steps. It studies how you respond to circular versus hexagonal progress bars, then adjusts its interface to keep you hooked. Social media feeds now test how different fractal background patterns affect your engagement, serving up hypnotic spirals when they want you scrolling longer. It's sacred geometry with a feedback loop, each click teaching the system how to better sculpt your behavior tomorrow. What's chilling is how willingly we embrace these digital ziggurats. We put on AR glasses that overlay hidden arrows on sidewalks, guiding us toward partner stores, and call it convenience. We let navigation apps reroute us through shopping districts disguised as scenic alternatives, oblivious to the fact that every turn is a calculated nudge. The great irony, the same geometric principles that once made us kneel in awe before gods now make us tap, buy now, with the same reverent impulse. The tools have changed, but the trance remains. Yet there's a glitch in this system, literally. Glitches remind us that these worlds are constructed. When VR corridors suddenly stretch into impossible non-Euclidean shapes or GPS grids briefly falter, we catch fleeting glimpses of the strings. Maybe that's the modern equivalent of finding mason's marks on cathedral stones, a hint that behind the algorithm's omniscience, there's still a human hand, shaky and flawed. The question isn't whether we'll live in these algorithmic sacred spaces. We already do. It's whether we'll ever learn to see the geometry long enough to step outside its lines. From stone circles to smartphone screens, sacred geometry remains the silent architect of obedience, a blueprint etched not just in stone and steel, but in the very wiring of our minds. That unsettling sense of awe in a cathedral, the inexplicable urge to linger in a shopping mall, the automatic straightening of your posture in a courthouse, these aren't accidents. They're the echoes of a design language perfected over millennia, one that whispers to us in shapes we're biologically wired to obey. But here's the turning point. Once you see these patterns, they lose their grip. Awareness is the chisel that cracks the code. Think about the last time you walked into a government building. Those soaring columns, the symmetrical staircases, the way your voice instinctively dropped to a hush, none of that is neutral. It's a script written in geometry, and for centuries we've been performing our roles without reading the stage directions. Now imagine pausing at the threshold, squinting past the grandeur to see the strings. Notice how the windows are spaced just so to frame a flag or a portrait. Observe how the hallway narrows as you approach the inner offices, funneling you toward power. These details aren't decorative, they're deliberate. The same revelation applies to your daily scroll through social media. Those endless feeds aren't just chaotic streams, they're digital labyrinths, they're algorithms borrowing the spiral's hypnotic pull to keep you thumbing downward. Even the like buttons placement follows sacred proportions, tapping into the same neural pathways that once made pilgrims kneel before geometric altars. But here's the difference. Unlike our ancestors, we carry these traps in our pockets. The cathedral is everywhere now, and its priests wear hoodies. Yet freedom begins with a simple act of noticing. Next time you enter a grand space, whether a museum, a train station, or even your office lobby, ask yourself two questions. Who designed these lines, and what do they want me to feel? Does the ceiling press down or lift up? Do the corridors open like arms or narrow like arrows? These aren't just architectural quirks, they're the grammar of control, and fluency starts with literacy. So let's turn the tools against the masters. Share your stories below. Have you ever felt your mood shift in a particular building without knowing why? Caught yourself following a path you didn't choose? Your awareness is the first crack in the facade. And if you're hungry for more hidden histories of power, don't forget to subscribe. The next time you look up at a skyscraper or down at your phone, remember, the shapes haven't changed, but you have.